Hi everybody, welcome back to the broadcast studio here at World Procurement Congress, powered by SAP Ariba. I'm delighted that Severine from L'Oreal, that Corinna from SAP have been able to join me today. We're going to have a conversation about disruption, we're going to have a conversation about sustainability, and we'll see where the rest of the conversation goes. Severine, let me start with you. We do a study every year with The Economist, and it's about procurement, but it engages the entire C-suite. It engages CFOs and CPOs and chief supply chain officers, etc. And we asked a question around short and long-term priorities. And what was interesting this year was that sustainability came in second, in both short and long-term, and that was a change from previous years. How can companies integrate into their processes compliance for sustainability regulations? What can they do to help drive some of those outcomes that we want?
For me, it all starts by integrating in the day-to-day activities the sustainability topic. So pick any of your process and think about the way you can put a little bit of this sustainability dimensions. For example, I know in the procurement team, we aim to put sustainability in the supplier performance scorecard. It's beginning to integrate this dimension. Also, we know that in the business award process, for every call for tender, we need to find a better way to integrate sustainability criteria as much as the price competitive criteria.
So like balancing through a balanced scorecard and a weighting and what have you.
Absolutely.
It's interesting that you say that, because I was having a conversation yesterday with somebody and they were saying when you look at evaluation, a lot of the suppliers are hearing us talk about all these other things, but then they don't necessarily trust that that's what we do, because it comes down to a price decision. So it's interesting to hear you say around ensuring that balance was there.
And I can tell an example from L'Oreal. Actually, we have inclusive sourcing. It's a more than 10 years program, and I can testimony that in the last 6 years, systematically, we asked the supplier at the business award the number of beneficiaries they will include if they win the business. And this is a key decision criteria for the buyers.
Okay, so you're measuring the impact at the time as well, rather than just a tick in the box. It's like, how are we impacting the world through either job creation or whatever it happens to be?
With our choices and decisions, absolutely.
Fantastic. That's awesome, thank you. Corinna, let me bring you in here. In the same study, it identified that we gave a list of different sustainability priorities. Basically said, pick your top two. And essentially the joint top two was compliance, so compliance to all the different kind of bits of legislation that there are, and I think there's a massively increasing level of legislation as well. But also carbon reduction as well, and for carbon reduction, it's more scope 1 and scope 2 than scope 3, because we had scope 3 separately, and some interesting industry data around that, but scope 1 and scope 2 was where they were. So I guess my question to you is, when listening to the customers and speaking to the customers as you do, what are you hearing from the customers as to how they're going about achieving those two goals?
So when I speak to all the customers, and I think it resonates very well what you presented on stage as well, is you have so many legislation coming up, popping like left and right. We have the Modern Slavery Act in Australia, we have the German Supply Chain Due Diligence Act, we have deforestation specifically in France. So even though you might be headquartered in one country, you need to look at it globally. So how do our customers make sure, in order to keep up with it, right? There needs to be the culture to be agile enough to address these legislations in the first hand. And sustainability is a variety. It's to reduce scope 1, 2, 3 carbon emission, depending on where you are. It is addressing human rights. It is how to be more diverse, right? It is circular economy. It could be anything. For me, what it boils down to, it is the company strategy. And I was impressed because you are actually really advanced in L'Oreal. What you've shared today, you have some ambitious goals. By 2030, you wanted to reduce your, or you wanted to get your suppliers to reduce the footprint by 50%. I suspect this is very long in the making, right? So if you really need to think about it, like you should have started a couple of years ago, and if you have not thought about the entire sustainability aspect, then you definitely need to start now in order to see some traction and to actually achieve those KPIs that I find very impressive.
That's awesome, thank you very much for that. Thinking about sustainability as a risk and thinking about probably the amount of disruption and risks that we've been experiencing. I was about to use the word enjoying, and I'm not sure that would be the right word to use from a sort of disruption. What are the impacts that you've been facing from all of these disruptions? And how has it changed your strategic priorities? And what do you think's still to change?
Yes, I like your expression on the ride. I will take a roller coaster ride to describe this period of time. And it's true, it puts in perspective the importance, to have a more resilient supply chain. Because the time to really concentrate your sourcing in one single region is over, and the pandemic was a key moment to learn that by the hard way, by the way. And so in L'Oréal, we have developed, a full cockpit of supply chain resiliency, acting globally, able to, map and to see the different disruption across the world, and to act quickly on decision. So this is really what we put in place, and that we are leveraging, and we are, let's say, going further on that to really make a more resilient supply chain. Yeah?
And I think that's interesting because the balance between resiliency and efficiency in supply chains, I think is, I think that's quite a big sort of impact that people are facing. I think it lurched very much towards efficiency kind of pre-2019, 2020, and it lurched resiliency for 2 years. And now I think people are trying to figure out what the balance really is between resiliency and efficiency. Can't be too focused on one because it can negatively impact what's going on. Is that happening now within L'Oréal?
Yes, it's definitely an area we are working on, and I wanted also to pinpoint that as you work towards more resilient supply chain, you're going to learn more your supplier of suppliers of supplier. You're going to be able to have getting, back to your point, more transparency on the supply chain, and this will serve also the compliance on human rights, which is a hit topic. So I will join the both, resiliency and human rights compliance. It is something that we are putting very deeply in place at this moment.
It's interesting that you'd say about the supply chain visibility to get the suppliers of the suppliers. 2020 Deloitte CPO report, only 90% of organizations, 90% of organizations can't see beyond tier 1. I saw another Deloitte report about 12 months ago, and it's at 70% now. So it's getting better, but in terms of going into tier 3 and tier 4, where a lot of human rights issues really happen, I think that's...
But for me, it really depends of the sector you need to face in. Sometimes to stay at the tier 1, it's okay, but you have really a heavy, risky sector, not speaking about, a very natural, like palm, for example, where you need to know already now, and we are speaking tier 5 already. So it's a matter of where you focus your resources and effort to have really a drilling effect, drill down effect towards tier N. And sometimes you need to deprioritize other sectors where you have more time, there is more risk on human rights. But this is where we do.
Corinna, what are you experiencing and feeling in sort of broader in terms of that resiliency, efficiency, and impacts, and what people are doing differently from a strategic priorities perspective?
So what I've observed over the past years with the customers is you can be prepared for disruption. And the customers who are prepared the best are the ones who have a really strong procurement policy. They know what they want, they go after goals, they have processes, and they have an organization that supports that. Now, if you have that, you're in a way better position to solve any disruption. No matter if we talk about the Baltimore Bridge collapse, and then let's just say your material were on the ship that couldn't be docked. So you being notified about that you will not be able to produce maybe one of your makeup lines, that is a key information that you need to have in order to go for other sources of supply, so you can at least fulfill the demand, right? And if you have that strong procurement setup, then I do think that we are in a position to be prepared for disruption.
It's interesting you talk about be prepared. I was a Cub Scout, that was the Cub Scout motto. But let's think about what's next. Let's think about what do we think the next big disruption might be? And importantly, how are we going to prepare for it?
Yes, in my eyes, actually it has already started about the Gen AI revolution and the impacts on the future of work. How do we prepare better, let's say, our procurement function? Is it about upskilling, reskilling? That's really an important question, and we are exploring at this moment all the different dimensions on Gen AI to free up more time to what matters for procurement function.
Yeah, I think, again, in the Economist study, it showed that Gen AI was, well, number one, AI was a driver of digitalization, and two, Gen AI was the technology trend that many organizations were wanting to at least pilot in the next 12 to 18 months and see how that goes. Corinna, what do you think on this?
I fully agree with you. I think we already are in the disruption. I mean, we had machine learning for the last years, but Gen AI is going to redefine how we do procurement so that we can focus on more value-adding tasks. It will also redefine how we maybe engage with enterprise software. And after all, at its core, procurement is a human-to-human business, but how can we actually have Gen AI support that journey, right?
Corinna, Severine, thank you very much for joining me here today. And with that, we're going to end this broadcast studio session and look forward to seeing you all again in the next one.